Showing up, we are having a public meeting tonight, scheduled before our council meeting.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
we have members of the public on Zoom that may want to participate. They can raise their virtual hands if they would like to speak during the public hearing. Also, any members of the public in the audience, we ask that you go to the podium in the corner and speak into the microphone when you speak, and just state your name. Thank you.
So you raise your hand?
Pick up my badge and see if
Ernie Grolleman, Johnson Heights, Ward 2. I have a suggestion on how you can spend that money to help a significant portion of the population that's being affected by the COVID crisis. People who have asthma, like my daughter, are severely impacted by the COVID crisis, because asthma is a disease that has inflammation of the lungs. And when you get a COVID infection, it affects the lungs, and in worst cases, some people wind up in the hospital on a ventilator. So my suggestion is that you take some of the money that's being given to you and spend it to help people with asthma and other people as well. People with asthma are also severely impacted by wood smoke because it can cause asthma attacks that in worst cases can kill you. So it's a little bit more of an impact than an economic impact. And the wood smoke is immunotoxic, according to the toxicologists in the federal government. That means it knocks out the immune system so they can't fight off the viruses as well. Now, I talked to Paul LePage about this issue a few years ago in a town hall meeting when he was governor. He agreed with me that wood smoke is unhealthy and unsafe, and it should be stopped according to the nuisance laws. It had to be stopped, he said. But then he added, it will never happen because it will cost money. Well, now you have a little bit of money, so I'm asking you to siphon off a little bit of it to help with the enforcement of the nuisance laws, the state nuisance laws that have been on the books for 500 years. They came back into the country from England. And if you really do this the right way, you shouldn't have to spend any money at all, because it was written in the city codes that any costs incurred in enforcing codes or nuisance laws or environmental laws, anything like that, costs could be recouped thing. There's a policy statewide that says that if somebody believes there's a health problem, it has to be investigated, researched, stopped, and prevented. So that's what I would like to see done with the money.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Maria Grolleman, and I'm at 19 Johnson Heights. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
19 Johnson Heights. I believe some of the money also could be spent to enforce those laws, because those ordinances, because there are over 100 toxins in wood smoke. And if we work about clearing the air that everybody breathes, they have a better chance of fighting off COVID. as well as those that might have heart problems, asthma problems. If there's, throw wood smoke in that too, and there's more pressure on a person's body. So if there's money now to help, that would be a good way to help everyone breathe easier so that they might fight off the COVID. So, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oops, lost my hearing too. I'm Elizabeth Leonard, and I am in Ward 4. And I have well, I'll just take the other one off. I have a more big picture kind of vision of what to do with at least some of this money. Being a historian, as many of you know, I was thinking back to the Great Depression and the New Deal that followed it. And I was remembering that the New Deal, which tried to help the nation overcome the Great Depression, had three different goals: relief, recovery, and reform. And I think that the money that's coming to Waterville, like the money that's coming to the county, like the money that's coming to the state, should be considered and allocated with these three goals in mind: relief, recovery, and reform. My particular concern is for the most financially vulnerable people in our community. Obviously, I represent the Poor People's Campaign, so just as an idea for ways that there might be expenditures on relief, I thought immediately about the homeless shelter. I thought also, providing some money to the homeless shelter. I also thought about KV Cap with all the money that they are struggling to allocate appropriately to people who are in need and so on. There are certainly many agencies in town and many individuals who could use some immediate relief. I also thought about recovery, and along the lines of the New Deal again, I think about the jobs programs that the New Deal created to put people back to work. It created pools of money to create jobs, to put people back to work. And here I would say, I think this is not only a great plan, but a great opportunity for Waterville to speak up for a livable minimum wage, as opposed to the minimum wage that's been in place for, 200 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever it is, but to bump the minimum wage up and express ourselves as a community that not only wants to help people find jobs, to put them back to work, but also to provide a sustainable living minimum wage. And then in terms of reform, I was thinking about things like, as I spoke the other day about at the planning board meeting, about the possibility of the Sacred Heart Church property becoming a community center. I personally would love to see the city buy that property and turn it into a vibrant community center, and maybe the home of the city council, among many other things. But I also think about transportation, ways that we could put some of that money into sustainable long-term public transportation so that we transform in a long-term way the way that people get around this city, so that we're thinking ahead to a future where we want to be a little bit more green as a city, or for goodness sake, as someone who walks all over the city, and the mayor, of course, knows about this, let's build some more sidewalks so people can walk where they're going to go. So the community center, oh yes, and my last point, I can't see my own handwriting, is affordable housing. This is a big issue for me, and we need to transform the way people are able to live in this city. So I'd love to see that money broken out into pools of recovery, relief, recovery, and reform, and I'm happy to talk more about that in other settings.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Hello, my name is Michelle Prince, and I work at KV Cap. And I just wanted to provide the council with a little bit of information on what we've been seeing from our end that might provide a little insight into areas where people are struggling right now. I can certainly appreciate the issues that you have raised, and housing is certainly a huge issue. It was present certainly before the pandemic. It's been exacerbated, I think, because of it. At KVCAP, we've been administering a rental assistance program, and we've helped a lot of folks. What we haven't been able to do is necessarily help a lot of folks who are homeowners, because the monies that have been allocated so far have been going towards rental assistance primarily. So we know that there are folks out there who are homeowners who are struggling, and there may be some mortgage assistance relief coming down the pike, and we will certainly partner with the agency that will be overseeing those funds. But to date, I don't know when that money is going to become available, and I don't know if it will be able to be used for the breadth of assistance that we've been able to provide renters. The other thing that's a real struggle is actual availability of housing. That's not something that's going to be solved by $1.whatever million, but I think it's an opportunity to start some of that longer-term strategic thinking, perhaps. And certainly KVCAP is willing to come to any table and partner with city, with the housing committee, and folks who are working on that issue. Another issue that I would like to raise is childcare. Childcare is another issue that we haven't had enough childcare even before the pandemic. The pandemic certainly has made that much more difficult of a problem. A lot of folks who are private providers have closed their doors, or they've had to shrink the number of children that they can take in. So some creative thinking around ways that we could perhaps incentivize or bring new providers on, help people, entrepreneurs who want to start a new business. We certainly have capacity through our Educare program to help. We have sort of like a learning center where we could provide training, assistance, resources, but there may be other financial incentives that could possibly help folks want to step into that space. So those were just some of my thoughts, and I appreciate the opportunity.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
You were touching on relief for homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, what ideas did you have?
Well, so that's another whole question. I think we could do different kinds of things. I mean, right now there's a rental relief program that people, there's criteria people have to meet, and there's an application process, so something like that could potentially work. KVCAP certainly could step into that space. There are probably other agencies, I don't know if the city would even want to potentially step into that space. So that would be one way. Or maybe helping homeowners, maybe not so much with the mortgage side, because there's all kinds, there's other issues that come into play with mortgages, and you have to be very careful about how that work is done. But, people may have gotten behind on utilities, on internet, and there's no way for them to apply for that assistance right now, again, because they're renting. So, how much money that would eat up, I don't know. We could certainly look into how much it has taken on the rental side for Waterville. I'm pretty sure we could.
Can you get me that number?
We could figure that out. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll get that for you. Okay. Thank you.
Chief Massey.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'd ask you to consider spending some of that money on substance abuse treatment, such as Operation Hope. During the COVID pandemic, access was limited to a lot of people who were dealing with substance abuse, and Operation Hope really stepped up. We've seen a huge increase in those who are accessing services from us. where other agencies had to scale back and we were open 24/7 to offer substance abuse treatment to a lot of folks who were finding it difficult. They're a real vulnerable group, as you can well imagine, who are really susceptible to COVID-19 and a lot of other health-related issues. So we expended most of our money that we had for Operation Hope. As you probably know, Operation Hope is really supported through donations and fundraising. So that has been another hat that we've been wearing since we created Operation Hope. So if you want to know a number, I think $25,000 would help tremendously for the whole program and can allow us to continue to get people into substance abuse treatment. Thank you.
So, Chief, we've had this discussion a couple times over the last few years. I've always asked different ways that we could give Operation Hope money. In the past, you've been hesitant to take any sort of city money. Do you think we can change that? Because I think your 25 asking is low.
Yes, but again, I mean, let me let me change that number. We continue to plug away at fundraisers, which we have just in a couple of weeks for the golf tournament. So please think about that, playing around the golf and getting a team that supports Operation Hope. But again, we don't want to take any city money to the extent we can, especially taxpayer money.
I've been begging you to take it for years.
Yeah, and since its inception, we have not used taxpayer money.
I think we could help a lot more residents if we did. So, thank you.
I'm just wondering if you could give us some sense of the scale of difference you've seen with the pandemic in the numbers of people that you're seeing and helping.
Well, again, we certainly have seen an increase since the pandemic has hit, as other services, again, have been limited or not available to them. And because we're 24/7 operation, they're able to walk in at any time and help with substance abuse. So I would say that we have seen, I haven't looked at the numbers, but certainly a fairly large increase during this time period.
Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was just curious if, maybe we'll talk about that at some other point. But I would be interested to see what the numbers are as far as people needing help. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilor Klepak?
Hey, Chief.
Good evening.
Along those same lines, I just want to get a sense of the impact that $50,000 would help. What, like, in terms of actual lives, how many people would that enable the program to serve, or is it not really a linear thing like that?
That would be difficult. We can never predict the number of people who are going to come in and seek treatment. All I can say is that the $50,000 certainly would help sustain the program, and we wouldn't be spending so much time, and I'm talking about resources from the police department and fundraisers and those types of activities that we're doing now. So it would be nice to see the program secured for a couple of years without always having that on our mind and always planning for an event, a concert, a golf tournament to raise that money, and private donations. And people have been extremely generous donating towards the program.
Anybody else?
Right.
Oh. I think you're clear, Chief.
Thank you.
Yes. We're going to go to Bill Mitchell, and then, is that Katie? Yeah. These eyes still work.
Bill, can you hear us? You're on mute right now, sir.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you very much. And I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Bill Mitchell. I have lived and worked in Waterville for my entire life. Some really great ideas this evening for the best use of these funds. Very exciting to be, part of an opportunity to, invest money into our community. Just a little brief background on myself to kind of make the connection to my interest and engagement in Waterville. Some of you may know I own various businesses in Waterville. I employ 60 plus people throughout the city. I do a little bit of real estate development in Waterville, and I'm in the top 25 largest taxpayers in the city of Waterville. So I guess my point to that is that I absolutely have skin in the game and in all that we do in our great city, and it's just an awesome opportunity for us to do some really good things here. I'd like to propose more of a process per se than necessarily a specific, although I do have several ideas, a specific way to invest the money. I'd like to propose a process that we might consider implementing and then evaluating how we might go about spending these funds. $1.6 million of the Rescue Plan Act's funds that the city will receive from federal government. It's quite an opportunity to do, I think, some interesting things here. What I'd like to recommend that we consider is that the city create an advisory committee made up of maybe as many as 10 members. And I'd like to give suggestions on what those seats might represent throughout the city to give a broad base of constituencies that would give input into various ways in which we might invest this money into our community. One of the seats might be somebody from a major nonprofit within our community that's deeply connected to the broad needs and understands the conditions on the ground at this time as they see them. Someone who's really immersed in the various needs of our community. Maybe somebody that's a state legislator that's connected to Waterville, that understands the federal, state, and local process, and that could give input and perspective into different ways we might use this money. Somebody possibly from, the Central Maine Growth Council, who's engaged in local economic development and understands the economic impact of strategically investing these funds. And of course, somebody from the arts community, given that the city of Waterville is really positioning itself as a major destination in the state for arts and performing arts, really working to attract people from all over the state to visit Waterville. And perhaps maybe somebody from a local Maine-based foundation who could assist us with potentially doing grant writing and connecting us to other foundations and other sources that might consider matching some of or all of the proceeds if we strategically invest them. And then the other four members of this committee, or four of the other members, to be local business people who have a long track, proven record of successfully running businesses and leading initiatives, who have demonstrated community support and philanthropic giving over a number of years. And then lastly, the 10th slot would be somebody from the city who could give guidance on the process in which funds flow through the city system. Now, what I would do is suggest we take this to a level where we might consider this committee having the authority to hire a consultant or an investment advisor. Now, if I were to come across $1.6 million, the first couple of calls I would make would be to my financial advisors to give me input and suggestions on how best to invest this money. And my thought would be that if we were to spend maybe no more than 5% of these funds to bring in an advisor, a consultant, to walk us through what I call a SWOT analysis, and I think most of you know what that is, where we'd simply evaluate, the various ways and how we might invest these funds. And I think that the group would then come up with a long list of really interesting and beneficial ideas for the city to consider implementing for the greater good of our community. Now, what I would suggest is that each idea go through a process that would be a three-part narrative. That would be every single idea, let's say we had 20 ideas, that each idea would have a paragraph, part one, that would identify and explain the need or the opportunity to the city, to our citizens. Part two would be a paragraph that would explain exactly how the funds would be invested. We want to know exactly how these funds are going to be invested so that we're not second guessing or after the fact saying, gee, we should have done this or we should have done that, but the money's spent now, it's too late. And the third and the most important, I believe, is to describe in this narrative the economic impact or the benefit from the investment of the funds, with specific emphasis on generating a 2 or 3 times multiplier effect from the investment. So, for example, if we were to invest, for example, in something like adult education at the Waterville Adult Ed Center or KVCC, so maybe 10% of the money goes towards adult education, we would likely attract additional foundations to get behind us and maybe match those funds. So that's a one-time benefit of the money, right? An extra benefit. We would then retrain local people at a time when virtually every single business in the city of Waterville is looking to hire more people. I'm not sure about all of the folks on this at this meeting, but in my businesses and what I've seen around town is everyone is trying to hire people right now. So we'd retrain local people, and those folks would be employed in jobs likely earning more money and ultimately resulting in being productive citizens that would be contributing to the local economy and the community in a variety of ways. That to me is the multiplier effect. A successful economic program in the city of Waterville is going to benefit everybody at all levels of society. Now, from there, we have this long list of 20 ideas, as an example, that have a narrative that explain the need, explain the investment, and explain the outcome. We would then post those ideas on the city's website. And we'd encourage Waterville citizens to rank the top 10 ideas. We would invest up to 10% into 10 different ideas. We could invite non-residents to give input and simply separate the survey into 2 categories, a resident, a non-resident, and invite input from other people. I have found over my 38 years of being in business that the more input that I invite from my employees and other constituencies around my businesses, my advisors and so forth, generally the better, more informed decision that I make in how best to move forward in things that I do. Now, the ideas that we would generate, we're trying to really impact the economic benefit of the community in ways that we receive this multiplier effect, and things that will benefit the city of Waterville for many years to come, and have a lasting effect on the greater good of the city. I believe we're at a pivotal time in the city of Waterville's future. There's been massive investment in our downtown, and I believe a successful downtown will breed a broader, successful city of Waterville, and a successful Waterville will breed success in this part of central Maine. A year from now, we're going to be reopening our downtown, and I really think that the opportunity we have right now can really impact the trajectory of the city of Waterville in the next 5 to 10 plus years. So I suggest this approach and working together to maximize the opportunity by investing these funds in a variety of programs and initiatives that are beneficial to a broad base of constituencies and the greater good of the city's future. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight, and I really appreciate all the good work that all of you are doing at the City Council, the Mayor, the City Manager, and the executive team at the city. Joe, by the way, I think you may know, I've got 5 foursomes coming to your golf tournament in late September in support of the great cause of this opioid crisis. So thank you very much, and everybody have a great evening.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. And we're going to bring in Katie.
Good evening. I'm just turning on my camera. Good evening, Council and Mayor Quello. It's nice to see everybody. Thank you for having me. Before I get started describing the things that we're interested in, my name is Katie Spencer-White, by the way. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter and Services. I did want to endorse Chief Massey's request. I can tell you, if in terms of looking at numbers at Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter, we are seeing a significant uptick in the number of people experiencing homelessness who also have substance use disorder. I think if pre-pandemic, about 30 or 40% of our guests had some experience with substance use disorder. That number is now closer to 70%. I think the acute nature of the crisis, isolation, and the tremendous loss that a lot of people have experienced have all contributed to the increase in addiction in our community. And so anything we can do to expand treatment options is going to get our support as well. I also wanted to speak very briefly. I think there had been a question about how we can support homeowners. There's a number of really excellent ways that we can do that. We don't typically see at the shelter people who have been foreclosed upon, but I do a lot of this, do a lot of research into this specific topic for my doctoral studies. And I can tell you that the more we can encourage people to access utility assistance, which is available through KVCAP. Oftentimes that is simply an education activity. People don't realize, even if you're a homeowner, you can qualify for low-income heating and energy assistance. So we need to get people connected to those services. And importantly, I think there's a huge amount of work that we can do around loss mitigation, in particular, funding support for counsel for homeowners who are facing foreclosure. We know from the research that homeowners and tenants also, but in this case homeowners who are represented by counsel, we reduce the number of foreclosures upwards of 85 to 90%. So if we want to make an impact, particularly on low wealth homeowners, people perhaps who are on a fixed income and have been in their homes for a very long time, making sure they have do that, and that is actually an authorized use of the funds, of ARPA funds. So I think there's lots of things that we can think about in terms of keeping people safely in the ARPA funding to do that. I wanted to speak really briefly about the Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter and Services and the work that we've been doing and how we would like to see some of this funding used. It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. One of the things that I can tell you is that statewide, we have about 1,222, that's not about, that's an exact number, shelter beds across the state that are funded through Maine State Housing Authority. There's about another 200 sit outside of that framework, and that represents less than 20% of the number of beds that would be needed on any given night throughout the state of Maine. Mid-Maine Homeless Shelter operates about 4% of those beds. And we serve about 15% of the people locally who would otherwise call looking for a bed. One of the things we've learned through the pandemic, we were asked by Maine State Housing Authority to operate a FEMA-funded hotel to expand our services. And we jumped at that chance, so we've been operating on 2 sites fully since January, fully staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It enabled us to more than double our capacity. What we found, particularly in operating a hotel-based shelter that is non-congregate, is that we have seen a tremendous reducing homelessness. At any given night, about 90% of the families, the households that we were serving, had children under the age of 15. We don't see that trend dropping off. And so one of the things that our board is looking to do is expand the number of shelter beds specifically for families with children. We have had them in our Colby Street location historically up until March 2020. We serve both adults but we now know, in particular, we know that the pandemic or the virus is going to be with us for some period of time to come. And with children being ineligible for vaccination, particularly given that many of our youngest guests will not be eligible for vaccination, even when they're extended to children, because I believe the trials right now are focused on children who are 5 to 12, not the under 5s, and certainly not infants. That's just not a safe setting. A congregate shelter is just not a safe setting. So we expand and start a non-congregate shelter specifically for families using the same model, successful model that we have been operating at the shelter for the last 25 years. So anything that we can do to support that effort is going to be something that we would love to see supported. And lastly, one of the things that we would like to see some of the funding allocated to is supporting our case management program. One of the things that Maine Homeless Shelter does very successfully is transition people from the shelter environment to permanent housing. And in fact, we have the best track record in the state of making sure that 6 months after people leave shelter, they remain successfully permanently housed. We would like to expand our program, our case management program specifically, so that we can begin to work with more outside clients. Anybody who, for example, is placed in a hotel through general assistance and that's considered homeless, we can serve them. The trouble for us is oftentimes coming up with the funding to expand beyond what we can bill through MaineCare. So with some additional investment from the city using ARPA funds, we can begin to work specifically with a range of people in the community who may not be able to have a shelter bed with us, but who may be in hotels and require those wraparound services that, for the most part, other service providers are unable to provide. We can provide that. If we can hire an additional person, another member of staff, we'll be able to apply that same targeted case management model that has demonstrated success and make sure that when people leave a hotel and exit homelessness, they're able to stay successfully housed.
Thank you, Katie. Anybody got questions? All right. Can we bring in Michael Mosley?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Michael Mosley. I do quite a bit around the state and town. I am a project coordinator for Maine Children's Alliance. I'm also a parent ambassador at Educare, and I sit on their policy council and the KVCAP's board of directors. Most importantly, though, I operated a hotel in this town for about 7 years. I quit. And you know why I quit? Because we have a housing shortage and it's causing serious harm. When I say we have a problem, the easiest way to tell you this is before the pandemic hit, we might get 1 or 2 calls a week, maybe even a month for an extended stay, meaning something longer than 7 days. And it was usually a business, like a construction company. Which, by the way, in case you didn't know, most of the construction that happens around town usually happens from people from out of state. So job training for contractors and things around construction would also be a good idea. But that's beside the point. So now, after the pandemic, we were getting daily calls for monthly stays because people are in desperate, desperate need of housing. And this situation hasn't gotten any better. We've got people living out in the woods. We've got people sleeping in the Walmart parking lot. We've got people taking up whatever space that they can. And right now, their best option is to find a good place to camp where they won't get harassed for being homeless. So honestly, like the two main things for me are childcare, getting people back to work by giving them the support that they need. And I mean, not just like, hey, we have the Alpha, we need actual like childcare that works around a schedule of workers who work on shifts. That's kind of where the reality is. If you don't work a 9 to 5, it is very, very hard to get childcare. And there's been a vicious cycle since before the pandemic of you need a job to get childcare, but you also need childcare to get a job. And if you can't somehow magically make one of those happen, you're not getting the other one. But right now, what I want to talk about first and foremost, though, is housing, because I don't care what you do, but something needs to happen. Because like 20 years ago, the city commissioned a study, and that study said that we have twice the rate of rentals of any place in the state, and that 25% of our housing is inadequate. That was 20 years ago, and nothing really has changed. And you know why nothing has really changed? Because at the same time, that study said that the city needed to be historically proactive. Historically. Bigger than what we did during the Great Society, bigger than we did during the cap agency push in the 80s. They need to be historically active, and all options need to be on the table. So I would like to see some of this money go to making the city historically active and getting housing done, because we need all types of housing. We needed all types of housing 20 years ago, and we needed all types of affordable housing 20 years ago. On that same tip, we have developers right now. I just heard somebody talk about we need to get input from people and name 10 people, and not one of those people was an actual citizen of the city, which is insane. When you only listen to developers, you get things like the Hathaway, which is selling $1,000 studio apartments that nobody can actually rent, because that doesn't make any sense for this economy, our local economy. Or you get people who want to put up $400,000 per house neighborhoods, which aren't accessible to working people. We need working family houses. And a lot of the housing that's been proposed or is about to be built is 1 or 2 bedroom. If you're a family of 4, that doesn't work. It just doesn't. Especially if you have more than one gender of child. Or say one of your child has special needs and they need their own space. Or if you want to expand your family and do things like foster, because those things are also needed. And then, on top of it, you're losing people. You're hemorrhaging people more than you think that you are, because people are getting priced out of the market, they're getting pushed out into the outside towns, and then they hate people for it in this town because they had been living here for years. And then suddenly they can't afford to be in the town where they work anymore, or where they get services, or where they have all their social supports. Like, we need to do something about that with an urgency, with a serious urgency. And KVCC, not too long ago, was offering free carpenter classes. Why aren't we doing more of that? Why aren't we trying to fill some of these gaps that we know are here, like construction and housing, with our own people? Or if not from the city, at least the surrounding area. We've got to do something, because this is a serious, serious issue. So I will leave it at that for the moment. Oh, and one more thing. Social services for children in these schools, because after the last 2 years, everybody needs some help. Everybody. And our children are no exception.
Thank you, Michael. State Representative Bruce White. And I think that's going to be the last one, because we're going to move into executive session. Make it good, Bruce. You're the last one.
Thank you. As he mentioned, my name is Bruce White. I am a state rep, one of the 2 state reps in Waterville. Some of the ideas that I had were already, the themes of tonight. What Elizabeth said and Michelle, transportation, affordable housing, and as Elizabeth mentioned, go with the New Deal, the relief, recovery, reform. She happened to mention the homeless shelter and KB Cap. It was great that they were here to advocate. And again, You know, I know the council has talked about transportation in the city, so we know how important that is. We're doing a lot of that at the state level, as well as affordable housing, and childcare was on my list as well. And of course, education and substance abuse, all of these themes. But it's like, how do you put an amount on any of these? You know, it's a complicated issue to put how much is worth, you know, each item is, or thing is worth. I think when I heard Bill Mitchell talking about an advisory committee, I thought about us at the state level. Many times when there's a bill that is quite complicated, we'll form a study group. And I think what's important about that is that you have an end date. You know, you have that committee, but it's not just ongoing forever. This money, obviously, I think I heard Eric at one meeting say, you know, we want to get this put into place sooner than later. So maybe an advisory committee with a time frame of 60 or 90 days at most, and bring all these ideas, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Flip a coin, and, you know, whoever, how are you going to really figure it out? And I think having a well-rounded group of people sitting in a room and proposing these things back makes a lot of sense, and I think you'll get the biggest bang for your dollar, and you'll get more of that input from community members who maybe weren't here tonight to be able to speak, and maybe that idea about putting some type of survey online, or as people on that committee maybe will talk to other people in the community and things like that over the period of time that you see fit to do. So I just want to really strongly recommend, again, as we do at the state, form a committee, have an end date in sight, and just see what happens from there. I think there are a lot of good, compelling ideas here too. So thank you. Thanks for providing this format.
So to touch on what you said, Bruce, Bill, when Bill was speaking, I think what I heard from Bill was that he nominated himself, you, Garvin, and a couple more people, Michelle, to get on that committee. So
Well, I don't know that he nominated me, but I would.
I heard it. I mean, I don't know about
I would
anybody else.
certainly be willing to, you know, I certainly have a lot of, you know, care for the community, and, you know, would be interested if you see fit. Thank you.
Council's got a lot of decisions to make going forward. They're up to the task. I will say, like Eric has said before, that whatever we decide to do, the people that even 3 months, we're going to be right around Christmas time and still talking about it. So if you're going to help some people, we should help those people right away, and then discuss what you're going to do with the larger bulk of that money. Go ahead, Eric. Oh. What's the name on it?
Emmanuel Harrison.
We'll put that person up next. Go ahead.
I just want to echo what Jay said, that I think there are some things here that are obvious uses of this money that don't necessarily tell me that these are, you know, mental health services, addiction treatment. You know, those things are pretty obvious. Stuff around the homeless shelter and housing, you know, so I think those are ways that we can probably act pretty quickly. Luckily, we have organizations like KVCAP and the homeless shelter that, you know, there's no need to reinvent the wheel there. We can invest in the services that they're already providing that have long been underfunded in this community. So I'm hoping perhaps we can act on some of those things quickly, and then see, you know, what is the balance of the funds that are left, and have a more in-depth discussion about how we can wisely spend those dollars to help the community. So I agree. Let's not drag this out. Sometimes discussion just for the sake of discussion is not the wisest course of action.
I'm going to go to that person first. Are they up? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Manuel.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks very much for holding this forum. And I guess I just want to reiterate, I think we've already had a lot of great ideas brought forth. You know, as my friend Pogo would say, we're surrounded by insurmountable opportunities. There's a ton of stuff to do. And my thought is that that you all should pick a couple. Don't spread it out over a bunch of different efforts giving little amounts, but pick the two most important of these issues that people have brought up and really put significant funds behind it. We're in an emergency. This isn't a time, in my way of thinking, for long-term planning. This is a time to help our people, the most vulnerable people in this community, with the effects of COVID-19. That's what the money is there for. And so the discussion about housing, I think, is critical. The discussion about childcare is critical. If I were on the council, those would probably be the two things that I was most concerned about. I found the testimony by both Michelle and Katie very compelling, and I would say you could form a smaller committee of the people that are experts in those areas about how it would be best to spend that money to help with the problem of homelessness and to help with the problem of childcare. So those would be my choices, but the council will, figure out what those are for them. But I really would suggest that you really narrow it down to two things and really put significant funds behind those things. So I appreciate the chance to participate. I wasn't quite sure how to do it, and I guess I did it okay to get on here. And I thank all of you for doing this really, really important work. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're gonna bring Bill back in one more time. And then that's it.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Great. Thank you very much. I guess I would just like to reiterate a couple of things. As many important causes as there are right now, and I support many of them, I'm not sure that we're in a crisis situation where we have to make rushed decisions on anything. Whether it takes 60 days or 90 days, I agree with Bruce White that there should be an end date to the process. I think 90 days would probably do justice. Bruce would be a great person to ask what we do at the state level. Is it 90 days? What's the normal process for a committee to do fact-finding and its due diligence around a complex issue? I would also counter the, or maybe do a little pushback on the notion of choosing two things versus more than two things, or investments as I would refer to them, being that I would dare say that any organization in the city of Waterville that got a check for $150,000 or $60,000 would be doing any day of the week. And if we do this strategically and find foundations and other organizations, and they're out there, we bring in a grant person, someone from a foundation that understands this stuff, that we can double down on our money. And I would also argue, and Eric, with all due respect, I don't think there are any no-brainers right now. I think everything is open for discussion. I don't think we need to rush into any decisions. I'm a supporter of all the organizations that you mentioned, but I don't think there's any no-brainers. I think we need to think this through in a well-thought-out process with a group of people who have a broad base of expertise that can make solid recommendations to the council after a thorough due diligence process, and then execute.
Thank you, Bill. Councilor Green.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone who's spoken tonight. It's been really interesting to hear different voices from different parts of the community. I just wanted to in particular thank Bill Mitchell for introducing the question of the process. It is something that I discussed with Steve Daly when we just started to talk about this forum, and so it definitely is the intent to establish a process with different representatives of different parts of the community. I guess I would also say that we do have two tracks here. We have one where we have people who are in need right now of funds. And I would say that we probably do have a crisis, and there are funds that should be spent in the short term, as winter comes on. And then there are also opportunities on the horizon. And there are also other funding sources. So this is our pot of money, but the county has 26 million that they are dispersing as well, and there are other funds, of course, coming to our state and our communities that have particular targets like broadband, et cetera. So let's take the large view and look, I agree, strategically, what will this money do for Waterville in both the short and the long term, knowing that there are quite a few other opportunities out there. So thanks again to everyone who spoke tonight.
Anybody else? All right, we're going to end this, and we're going to go, do I have a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We're going, all in favor of executive, actually, can I get a roll call on executive session, Patty, because we got people online?
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor DeBrito? Yes. Councilor Klepak?
Yep.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Just to let the
Good evening, everyone. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. There are agendas available on the back wall or online. I don't know, are we? We'll let Claude catch up. All items under unfinished business or new business are voted on separately. First, councilors will be given an opportunity for questions or comments. Once councilors have had an opportunity to speak, citizens will be given an opportunity for comments or questions. Citizens must speak at the podium and identify themselves. Each citizen will be allowed one opportunity to speak and will be limited to 3 minutes. Finally, the councilors will be given another opportunity to speak or comment. Citizens who would like to speak on a topic that does not appear on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting under the public comment section of the agenda. Consent agenda items include routine business such as items as unapproved from, wait a minute, I think I'm done with that. I am. All right. And Patty, do we have something for the Zoom webinar? Because I don't have that on here.
If anyone from the public wishes to participate during the meeting, if they have a comment, they need to raise their virtual hand, and they'll be recognized by the mayor, and they'll be reassigned their permissions to be allowed to speak. And once they've asked their question or given their comment, then they'll be reassigned back to an attendee, and it appears like you're being disconnected during that time, but you're not. You're just being reset.
Thank you, Patty. We did that. Executive session. Regular meeting. Let's stand up for the pledge. Say look at Rick, but we're not there anymore.
Nope. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Disclosure of conflict of interest. Anybody got a conflict? Seeing none. Manager's report. You have anything? It's on my list.
Just a couple, can you hear me?
Yeah.
A couple of quick items.
Your mic is off. Your mic is off. Flip
I
it
can
up.
hear him.
There you go.
How's that?
Yep.
Is that better?
Mm. Yes.
Just quickly, I want to let you all know that our recruiting is going well. We have many candidates for 2 or 3 of the positions that we have advertised. We have a sparsity of candidates for some others. It seems to be a function of who's available in the different professions and who's looking. I expect that we're going to be hiring people quite soon, and that once we get through the total number of hires that we have listed, we're probably going to be looking at maybe almost the end of this year, this calendar year. I'll keep you posted as things move along, and I think we're doing okay. On the build project, just a quick note, we're encountering a number of things on that project that are sort of coming up as surprises as we move along. The contractor begins to do something, and our project manager steps in and asks why they're doing that a certain way or using certain materials. And our project manager, we have a project manager, and our city engineer is also working on the project. The city engineer has had to make a number of field changes over the course of the project, and it seems to be getting to be more at this stage because they're doing more of the fine work, the detailed work. One thing that was pointed out to me just tonight before this meeting has to do with the street lights that have been mounted on Main Street. They are not at all what we expected, yet this is a project that was put together by Maine DOT, and we're going to step in and get them changed. Sometimes this costs money, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on whether Maine DOT has another location where they can use what we don't want them to use here. A quick example, beyond the streetlights that they put up on Main Street right now is the traffic signal posts and mast arms that we talked about back maybe in May or so. They had failed to order the right units for downtown Waterville, so they went to another one of their projects, and we're going to bring those units here for downtown Waterville, and they were all galvanized pipe, which isn't the mood or the aesthetic that we're trying to create in downtown Waterville. But their approach to it was, well, we're spending the money on it, so this is what you're going to get. And you may recall that you approved us spending some additional money to have them powder coated black so that they blend in more with the environment of downtown. That's been going on a fairly regular basis. There are two large holes that you may have noticed at the corner of Temple and Front Streets. Those are for the pedestals of traffic signals. One of the holes is fine. They dug down through ledge and they have all of the steel in there for the concrete. The other hole, they struck oil. And it seems to have come from a previous spill in an adjacent building where part of the building got flooded and their oil tanks tipped over and spilled the oil, and it seeped down through the floor, and our contractor found it. But Maine DOT's DEP people came in, and they said that as long as they captured it and kept it right there where it is, then we can move forward with that hole also. Unfortunately, there's been another problem having to do with the materials that they ordered. This is the contractor did this. He ordered the wrong bolts to be used to anchor the units, so that hole is going to be filled in for the winter, and they'll have to dig it again in the spring because the lead time on the right bolts is like 4 months. So these are the things that are going on with this project that keep us busy, but it's moving forward. You saw the sidewalks on the west side of Main Street. They look great. And that's all being done by a subcontractor who's doing a wonderful job. So we're moving forward. People are questioning whether or not the project's going to get done in 2 years. My answer to that is it's either going to get done in 2 years or the contractor's going to pay us something like, I forget what the amount is, but it's going to be a good outcome. It's just kind of tough getting there. And then finally, I wanted to give you an update on the EMS vaccine requirements set by the governor. We haven't seen any movement at all in modifying that requirement or any of the deadlines. We have lost 2 people in the fire department who resigned because of a religious conflict having to do with the vaccine itself, and the other resigned over a child care problem because of our need to hold over shifts on a fairly unannounced basis because of vacations and other absences where we can't get enough people to come back and work the next shift. We have to hold people over, and typically we would hold over the junior people, and this one person was being held, can't work 2 24-hour shifts in a row because of child care problems. So, you know, we're encountering unusual problems, but Chief Essler is doing a great job working through it, and his team is really stepping up to the plate. We have 15 firefighter EMTs for a city of 16,000 people that grows probably 3 times that size on weekends. And, you know, so we've got 1 firefighter per 3,000 people in the city on weekends, and it's a very busy department. the future is still looking bright, and I'd like to applaud them all for the work that they do. They really stand out.
Thank you, Steve. Rick?
Steve, are we still on the 4 weeks behind schedule on the bill grant with the given extras? Are we, last time we had got an update, we're still 4 weeks behind schedule? Or the build project as a whole?
Oh, the build project?
Yeah.
I don't have an estimate currently, but I would think, I'm going to guess that we're farther behind than that.
Okay.
But there aren't any milestones in that contract.
No, I understand that. I'm looking down the road to the end of 2 years.
Yeah.
If we're 4 weeks behind schedule right now, and the additional problems are going to add to that time, and we haven't even got halfway up the street yet on one street.
Right. Right.
So.
The contractor has decided to tackle the most difficult work at first, and I think that's led to a lot of the delays. But what we're finding is that the underground utilities aren't well documented, and that the plan for what we're supposed to do sometimes gets interrupted because CMP has to come in and do work that they didn't know had to be done, and it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get that done. CMT just had to replace a conduit on Front Street that cost them $350,000 for 300 feet of conduit. So, and it was a surprise. No one knew it was there. So, we're encountering these problems, and it just keeps getting in the way.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
I'm done. All set.
Okay. We're going to do the proclamation, then you guys can do consent agenda. I have a proclamation here for National Clean Energy Week. Whereas Maine is committed to a clean energy future and enjoys abundant forms of renewable energy that powers homes and businesses across the state, and whereas the generation of power from renewable sources, including forms such as hydro, wood, wind, and solar, accounts for nearly 4/5 of the net electricity generation in Maine, and whereas Maine has increased its renewable portfolio standard to 80% by 2030 and has a goal of 100% renewable energy by 2050, and whereas Maine leads New England in wind-powered generation and ranks 6th in the nation in the share of electricity generated from wind, and whereas the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy ranked Maine 16th in its 2020 State Energy Efficiency Scorecard, and whereas Maine has established mandates to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 45% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% by 2050, and created the Maine Climate Council to provide recommendations to meet these targets, and whereas the Maine clean energy jobs grow local economies and boost the state's workforce and economic development, and whereas National Clean Energy Week provides an opportunity for individuals, local governments, corporations, and other organizations in Maine to champion common sense solutions that address the United States' evolving economic and energy needs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jay Coelho, Mayor of Waterville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim September 20th through 25th as National Clean Energy Week, and urge all members of our community to recognize this observance. We're going to move on to approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Patty?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito? Council Klepak?
Yes.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay. Unfinished business. Ordinance. No, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to take the entire agenda by title only.
Second.
Patty, a roll call.
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, going on to ordinance 184, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amendments to public safety ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Steve, can you explain this to us, please?
Quickly, this is to increase the fire reserve count, which is currently at $150,000 for the ceiling, to $300,000. This account is funded by a portion of the surplus of ambulance revenues over the cost of providing that service from year to year. And it's being set aside to provide for equipment and vehicle purchases in the future.
Thank you, Steve. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
No.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, moving into resolution 185, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorizing issuance of a marijuana retail license to Frank Barony, doing business as Marijuanaville.
Move to adopt.
Steve, can you tell us what we found out on this?
There's
Oh,
no
you got-
second.
Sorry. Good.
Second.
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was just gonna, we can't vote on this until we take some sort of action on the safety zone. So I would recommend that we table this until after the discussion of ordinance 192-2021, which I'm not sure actually addresses this particular issue, but we should have that discussion before we have the discussion about this gentleman's item. So I'd make a motion to table it until after we discuss ordinance 192-2021.
Second.
Roll call, Patty?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito? Yes. Counselor Klepak?
No.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
All right, moving on to ordinance 186, 2021.
An ordinance providing for adoption of a mask ordinance.
Any discussion?
There's no
sorry.
motion.
This matter was offered by Councilor Frankie.
So moved.
All right. Counselor.
Mayor, if I may, we should probably table this indefinitely, given the resolution 200. If Councilor Frankie's in agreement.
Is that a motion to table?
Yes.
Do I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Patty, can I get a roll call?
I
I don't think there is. Once he says table, I have to go to vote.
Oh.
We can discuss about the table.
Go ahead.
I'd just like some clarification. We have an ordinance on adoption of a mask ordinance on the agenda, and we also have a resolution. So, Councilor Frankie, could you speak to that if you have some information about the two?
Well, the ordinance was tabled, so it remains active. I went back and made some revisions, toned it down to a resolution, which is coming up later in the meeting. My feeling is that we need to do something because the virus is spreading, so that's why I've put the ordinance out at the last meeting. I'm perfectly happy to see it the ordinance tabled until such time as it becomes absolutely necessary, which it may. But I I do hope that people will at least vote for the resolution so that we can start taking some action and do something serious about bringing this pandemic under control.
Did that answer your question, Councilor Green?
So if I understand your position, you would like us to adopt an ordinance, but a resolution would be second choice. So
yes,
okay. So we're considering the ordinance first, and then. Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the motion on the floor is to table indefinitely,
Yep.
which would kill the ordinance.
Right.
But he could bring it back up if he needed to. So, anybody else? Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
No.
No. Counsel Klepak?
No.
Counsel Green?
No.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
no,
Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 3 in favor and 4 opposed. That fails. So we're back to moving to adopt the ordinance.
Okay. Any discussion? Councilor Foss.
I am not all in for telling people what they can or cannot do to their bodies. The government should not be requiring what we do and do not do to our bodies. It is not the government's place to tell us what to take or to put masks on our face. That's why I'm opposed to this. That's why I asked for a resolution as a request to see if we get some just compliance on its own. Okay? I'm just not into telling people what they should or should not be doing to their bodies. That's all.
Any other?
Well, my position is that we should be following CDC guidance. And so I'm interested to hear, which it seems to me the resolution satisfies. So I'd like to hear why the ordinance would be preferable or more urgent at this point.
well, the reason I put the ordinance out to begin with is because I think it's a serious matter, and I think we need to do something. As far as the CDC, I really think that the national CD has said that wearing masks is the thing to do, even if you're vaccinated. The Maine has lagged behind, although we'd led the nation, if you'll recall, last summer, Mr. Foss, when even you were bragging about us wearing masks and making great progress against the virus. So it's a matter of, I just think that the state, if we're waiting for them, I think have fallen behind the curve. I would note that Portland is businesses as we are considering here just for city buildings. So there are other jurisdictions that are going farther than we are. We're not exactly in the lead on this, and I just think it's the right thing to do. We need to let the kids, in particular, know that the adults are taking this seriously, and are going to, as the kids are going to be required to put their masks on in school.
Steve.
I object to this on 2 grounds. One is that I think using an ordinance to require people to wear masks in city buildings is, when you use an ordinance, it's a law, a local law, and I think it's heavy-handed. I think that our COVID-19 team, which is made up of the fire chief, the police chief, myself, and the HR director, have managed the precautions all the way through the pandemic without incident, without objection from the public, and following Maine CDC guidelines right down the line. Administratively, I believe that we've handled it quite well. If the council wants to go forward and issue a policy or a guideline for the administration to follow, I think the resolution route is a better mechanism. It's not heavy-handed, it's not as clumsy as an ordinance can be, and it'll have the same effect. But I do think that the team that you have deserves recognition in how well it's handled the process all the way through.
Anyone else? Here.
I'll just say, in the beginning of all of this, I'll take the blame as much as anybody for some of the decisions that we made in the beginning, because it felt like the federal government was slow to act and the state was slow to act. And Rick was in the meeting where we made the call to ask the restaurants to shut down. As much as that was anybody's decision, I would say it was my decision. I think we're in a different place now. I think we know a lot more about what we're dealing with. I think we have state government that has been very proactive. I think has, for the most part, done a really good job. I think this is something that, if this is something the state feels that we need to do, they need to mandate it. Because it does no good to mandate wearing masks in city buildings when you can go to a restaurant, go to the grocery store, go to any number of places where people aren't wearing masks. So if the experts at the state level feel that this is necessary, they need to mandate it across the board. I think it creates an administrative nightmare for the police department and for the city manager for us to take this on a local level. We just came out of a meeting where we were talking about how, we're short-staffed, and, people are stressed working at the police department, at the fire department, and I don't think we need to make the choice as a city at this point, given where we are as a community, to put extra stress on our emergency services and safety workers. So I'm much more in support of a strong suggestion that people should wear masks rather than mandating it in city buildings.
Anyone else? Oh, go ahead, Councilor Klepak.
I voted against tabling indefinitely because I wanted to have the ordinance was still on the table. But I have to say, I agree with a lot of the things the other people that have spoken have said, and I would simply add that even if I was more inclined to go with an ordinance, the ordinance as it's written is still, I don't think the language is particularly good. It does not, there are no qualifiers or nuance to it. There's no sunset to it. I think that even if I was inclined to support an ordinance, I don't think I would support this one. I'm not going to support this one, just because I still don't think that it's written correctly. And I do agree with some of the other arguments about a resolution being a better path forward.
Thank you, Councilor Klepak. Anyone else? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call on this ordinance?
I got a question. Just before we go. So we're not going to adopt, well, it looks like we're not going to adopt this right now, but if CDC was to change that, we would automatically have to adapt to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'd be following the science,
All
and
right.
we'd be consistent at that point. If, I've said this last time, there has been so much information that is overlapping. One group says this thing, one group says this. We're supposed to follow the scientists until we don't want to follow the scientists. Follow the CDC. If the CDC tells us to put on a mask, we're going to throw on a mask. That's what they're there for. They're mandating tons of other things. If they were really worried about the mask right now, that'd be the first topic of conversation. It's not.
Federally, though, they are mandating masks, because any federal building that you go inside, you have to wear a mask. Like the courts, I was at the state building, I have to wear a mask. Even the surrounding buildings in Augusta, going inside those buildings, I have to wear a mask.
Some restaurants I have to wear a mask too. I don't plan on going to any federal building in the next few months, so I think I'm going to be all right. But until then, like I said, once the CDC says it, we'll do it.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody else? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
No.
Council DeBrito?
Claude had his hands.
Oh, I'm sorry, Claude, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond quickly to Tom, that I admit that it was heavy-handed. That was more or less my intent, was to sound a wake-up call. And certainly we've had some discussion. As I said, I just think that it's time to do something, even if the ordinances one of those things that I put out there as a wake-up call. Thank you.
We know you were spurring conversation. All right, can we get a roll call, please?
Council Morris?
Still a no.
Council DeBrito?
No.
Council Klepak?
I appreciate your concern, Claude, but I'm going to vote no.
Council Green?
No for me as well.
Council Frankie?
It's my resolution. Of course, I vote yes.
Council Thomas?
No.
The vote is 1 in favor and 6 opposed.
All right, moving on to new business. Resolution 190, 2021.
A resolution providing for ratification of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Waterville and the Waterville Professional Firefighter.
Steve, you want to talk about this, or Chief Essler? Oh, look at them pointing at each other. Go ahead, Steve, then Chief.
No, up. Thank you.
This only on or
Up.
Give Patty a yardstick and she's going to
off? This is a collective bargaining matter between the city and the firefighters. He worked diligently with the union to come to terms on an agreement where we can hire paramedics to fill a new position that we're calling fire medics. The terms and details of the agreement have been shared with you all, and we had a conversation about it in executive session. The matter before you is whether or not the council
Thank you, Steve. Chief?
I don't have a whole lot to add. Help the recruitment and retention of our organization, as well as help lead to some of the shifts being filled and some of the vacancies that we have at the fire department.
Chief, a question while you're up there, while I have your time. How do we compare when we pay any of your people versus the surrounding towns around us?
Starting pay for a firefighter, I believe, is $15.61 an hour here. Speaking to Winslow or Fairfield, their hourly rates are $19.31. So their hourly rates are considerably, entry level are considerably higher than ours.
So I hope that, and I know so, that this council is looking at different ways to rectify that. There's no reason why we're sending people into a burning building for less than what you're getting at Home Depot. So while I'm here, I hope that as long as I'm here, that our fire department and our police department, Chief, I see you back there too, are paid the way you deserve to be paid. We ask a lot of you. You do a lot for us, and we're nowhere close to being competitive.
I appreciate you recognizing that, and our fire department does a great job, and we are the kind of a bigger department than the surrounding areas, and we offer a lot more services than the surrounding departments as well. So our guys and girls do a great job, whether it be the full-timers or our part-time staff, so thank you for recognizing
We
that.
see it. Thank you. Any other discussion? Patty, oh, Claude.
Just quickly, Chief, I meant to ask you this in the before, but I slipped my mind. Are there any other collective bargaining agreements that you're aware of that have the fire medic needed?
No, there are some larger departments that implement this type of procedure. For example, Portland would be one of them, specific to their MedQ program. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's basically an EMS division of the fire department. Ours is not exactly like Portland for that matter, but it provides for an entry-level person who's trained as an EMS provider that can be trained to a firefight.
And just as a follow-up, are there current members of the bargaining unit who may be able to transfer into these new positions?
Yes, and in the MOU specifically, we've provided for lateral transfer opportunity, so those individuals will be taken care of first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. No other discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call, please?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yes.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
Yes.
Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Resolution 191, 2021.
A resolution providing for sale of certain airport road lots.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Steve, you want to explain this one to us?
Quickly, this is a vote to authorize the city manager to negotiate a purchase and sale agreement with a potential buyer for 2 lots off the eastern end of Airport Road, lots that are adjacent to a lot this person has already purchased.
Any other discussion?
And Steve, this will have to come back, this will come back to us once you've negotiated the price for our approval.
That's correct.
Hands up there, no. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yes.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
Yes.
Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to ordinance 192, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amendment to public safety ordinance safe zones.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Foss.
If I'm understanding this right, we were looking at this ordinance because of the business going in on College Ave, where the safe zone that was created around the homeless shelter had a very small parcel of land, was also disconnected from College Ave by not only a rail bed, but also a fence line. And this corrects that. In the line it says, if I remember right, where the heck is it? We can move things with exceptions. Where the heck is it?
section 4-4, exceptions on page 2.
Thank you. I thought it was on that one. With warrant exception must be cited. Am I correct in stating that?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
That's
now-
also in addition to providing a mechanism for notifying abutters, which was raised as an issue at the last meeting.
Yep.
That it puts a process in place that
Yeah.
would require notification.
Okay. So in other words, once we're done with this, we can now, for that little strip of land that poked into that 500-foot radius, or poked out of that 500-foot radius, we can adjust.
Yes.
If it's, if it's reasonable.
Is she still on? I believe she
Yes,
is.
yes, she is.
Yes, we can bring in Katie.
go ahead.
Steve, did we clear up the legal concerns that Bill Lee had?
Say it again?
Did we clear up the legal concerns that the city solicitor had with the language in this document?
I'm not sure that we've cleared up all of it, but we did have a conversation with him today, and the section on exceptions should have some parameters listed that would be reasons for exceptions. The way we wrote it, we tried to cover that by requiring that the reasons for making an exception be cited in the motion that grants the license. And I think that that's adequate. Your reasons can be all over the place. As an example with this one, as you pointed out, the walking distance is probably well over 1,000 feet from one location to the other. Yet, the very tip of the lot that this establishment would be on is all that's being touched by the current buffer zone. And you could cite that as a reason for making an exception.
And did when we met about the agenda and you showed us the map of the current safe zones, which did not include the new safe zone around the homeless shelter, it appeared this property was in a safe zone already. Is that correct? Even before we created the homeless shelter safe zone?
No, it wasn't, and it's not in a safe zone that would affect the business that's being proposed. There is another safe zone that emanates from the playground on Oak Street and Drummond, that corner. That safe zone is one of the statutory safe zones that elevates the category of a violation for maybe selling illegal drugs or
So it doesn't cover this use. It just, if you were to get caught selling, you'd pay more of a fine or do more jail time or?
Right.
Yes, yes.
And so do we have a map that just shows, because the one you showed me was that one, and it was concerning because frankly, like half of the city is in a safe zone.
Yeah, it is.
Because Waterville is so small. And so is there a map that shows the outline of safe zones that would prohibit?
Thank you.
I'm sure we don't have this on a PDF for the public to see, so
It's crazy.
I'm gonna
The amount of red.
try to
around the
make
city.
this so that at least Chad can maybe zoom in on it, but, man, I'm missing some of it here.
That's true.
That's okay for me. Seen the map, and I know that because Waterville's small and we have a lot of kids, that we have quite a bit of safe zone. And I frankly think that that's to Waterville's benefit that we do.
Okay. Katie, for a second. She's gonna squash this for you. Katie, are you there?
I am.
So, I received an email from you earlier today.
That's right.
And I was happy to see it. I appreciate that you reached out. So you understand the sort of like weird conundrum we fell in under this one?
I do. I have a lot of sympathy for the challenge before you right now.
And you know that we obviously want to protect the kids that are in your care and the playground that you have. Do you have any objection from this city council making a change this one time to make sure that somebody who fell through the cracks doesn't fall through the cracks? I mean, it's a business that, as we've said, is about 1,000 feet. I'm trying to stop all the back and forth and get right from you what you would like us to do or what you would be happy to see us do, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and that's really why I'm here tonight. I wanted to make it clear on behalf of the Mid-Main Homeless Shelter that we have zero objections to a legitimate business operating within the city limits. And we appreciate the unique nature of our lot and how we're located and the challenge apparently that Waterville as a whole faces. So for us, the main driver in seeking the safe zone designation was just to ensure that we could work more strategically with Chief Massey and his team, which thankfully they're practically across the street from us, for the prevention and detection of crime on our property. We wanted to be able to signpost that we're a safe zone and have access to those enhanced penalties so that anybody who comes onto our property understands what that will entail if they are engaging in illegal activity. So that's really our main concern. How do we protect our property, given that we have a mobile and transient population? That's our concern. And so I appreciate what the city has, the decision y'all have to make, and we would offer no objection to an amendment and for the issuance of a license within the safe zone as it stands currently.
Thank you, Katie. I think that'll help sort of streamline this. Go ahead, Eric.
And Steve, just to be clear, because this is a change to the ordinance, I mean, one, it has to be approved by 5 counselors, correct?
Correct.
2, it's going to come back to us for a second vote, so if there are issues with the language that we need to clean up with Bill Lee,
Yes.
we have time to do that before we vote again.
Yes.
Any other discussion?
So I guess I would just like to say, first of all, that, acknowledge the difficulty of this problem, which is that we have a business owner who entered into what he thought was a deal that would fly and was told it wouldn't. So I think it's great that we're fixing the ordinance to make sure that everyone's notified. I have real problems with tweaking an ordinance that we just adopted as a safe zone. And so I just want to put that out there. I guess I also have some questions about the statutory safe zones versus the municipal safe zones. Are the statutory safe zones also 500 feet?
No, I believe they're 1,000 feet.
1,000 feet. And where did the number 500 come from?
There's no history on that. It was a decision by the council at the time the ordinance was adopted.
It was part of the marijuana ordinance discussion, because state statute requires that there's a buffer around these establishments of at least 1,000 feet, and not less than 500 feet. So at that time, the marijuana committee opted for the 500-foot lesser buffer.
I see. So this was part of the city's marijuana ordinance?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know we touched on this before, and the reason I ask is because Katie was here with us, the person that's affected.
Mm-hmm.
Would it not be easier for all of us to remove the safe zone, give them their license, and put the safe zone back in place? And then you don't have to touch the ordinance or nothing. Then that business becomes grandfathered in. Nobody else can go within that section, and we move on. We're only trying to fix one error.
Well, today.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it's today. Like tomorrow, what you did it for this
anyone
one.
going forward is going to know that they can't put one there.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't.
I don't want to do that.
I don't
personally.
I'm not in favor of
No,
that.
and I think we're clear when we have to cite the reasons that we're skirting it. And so that later councils down the road can look at situations exactly like this and read the notes as to why we did what we did. Because in this particular instance, there is by the looks of it, 1/10 of an acre of land that goes into that safe zone.
It's a sliver.
It's a sliver. You know, now, like I said last time, if his business was 300 feet inside of that, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-go. But it's a sliver of property. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, there's nothing on that little piece of property. There's no reason that I could see, especially where we've got the roadbed, the rail bed, and a fence line guarding that from College Ave, let alone the distance. Like I said, if that thing was 300 feet closer, this would be what it is. But we're talking a little tiny, I mean, literally take that piece of paper and strip it off, and that's what we're talking about as far as land. You know? And that's why I think having it as its cited reasons in the talk of last council was so that we could look back on it 10 councils from now and say, oh yeah, they did it because of this. Okay, and those are things that 10 councils from now, we're gonna have to, people that are sitting here where we are gonna have to say, hey, why did they do that? Well, he got his business here, why can't I have my business over there? Well, that's because X, Y, and Z.
Well, I mean, no offense, we're going to get that at Patty's here. We would just act like at the end of the day, there was no issue, there was no history.
Right.
So as soon as history disappears, we won't have that documented anymore. No one's going to go back and look and find on what meeting we discussed that. So that's why we have the ordinance to say, well, this is what we're doing.
So
do we want to change future council want to change the ordinance, then great. I don't think anybody wants to go back and look and say, why did you make a decision for this one versus that one?
So should we
just crystal clear, make a decision on the ordinance and change the ordinance or don't?
So should we not add to the council notes clearer wording in the notes?
You have to start and just say, if you're going to want to look about marijuana ordinances, or you look at this date here, how are you going to reference which day we spoke about this?
True story.
10 years from now.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
I will just,
Patty will know.
I will note that we do keep minutes forever. We have a history of the city, and there are lots of times where we do research back 20 or 30 years because people want to know the nuance of why something was changed and was there any discussion. So it's not, I mean, it seems outlandish, but it happens all the time that we do look back on when we changed something and why we changed something, because there is a history to that. And we index everything so that we're not looking through a needle in a haystack.
And I will, Counselor, I'll add on to that Merrifield, to that point, had a hump in the road, or in their driveways, 2 driveways. She went back to 1925 when this council adopted the pipe that's in the ground and considered it city property, and now those 2 driveways are fixed because it is a city issue, back to 1925. It's a matter of us as a council, as a body, saying, hey, we need that information. That means we're going to table it for 2 more weeks while you get the information. And hopefully future councils will do that.
So, first of all, yay for historical record. And secondly, I mean, I think the issue here is just really on what basis would we make an exception in this case? Because we've got to have a good reason and not just something arbitrary. So,
Katie's my good reason.
yeah, I mean,
Katie's my good reason.
I guess I just want to go back to Katie and say, did I hear you say that you were okay with granting this license in this situation?
I believe what she said was that if people are doing illegal things, she wants them to pay the penalty, but she has no objections to a legal business. I think that's what she said.
That's what I got.
That's correct. It's the enforcement mechanisms that are afforded a safe zone that is particularly attractive to us, not the prevention of an otherwise legal business operating within a fairly distant proximity that is complicated by geography to the shelter.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, and I would just say that a lot of these ordinances that we've come up with around the marijuana issue, they're going to evolve because it's a new industry. And I think the committee acted with caution because, you know, there are people in the community who are hesitant and, you know, people always sort of jump to the worst possible scenarios of how these things are going to play out. And I think now that we see these businesses opening up, and, you know, they're respectable businesses that are operated just like any other business. And so I think as we get more comfortable with them, we're probably going to see these things evolve, and then nobody should be surprised by that.
But just to clarify, and I apologize, I didn't look up the ordinance, but specify that there shouldn't be a business located within 500 feet?
500 feet.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else? Councilor Frankie.
Excuse me, I'm a little confused. I got lost in the discussion about history. I love history. And which ordinance is doing which. We passed the making it the safe zone. Are we repealing that and voting for a new procedure? Or are we just voting for a new procedure and we'll have to go back to square one to do the whole thing with notice and to abutters and the whole rigmarole? Or are we doing Jay's idea of just going back to square one, jumping over the hedge? And would somebody please explain to me what's going on?
Go ahead.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this will give us a mechanism to make an exception so that this gentleman's business can open within the 500 feet that makes up the safe zone. But because the new ordinance, we'll just have to give a good reason why we're doing that. Why are we giving this exception? So we don't need to start all over. We have to vote twice on this ordinance, and then we can make an exception for this gentleman's business. And the exception would be because there's a 4-lane road that, you know, it's a tiny little sliver of property that comes into this safe zone. So it's not really accomplishing, I think, what the ordinance was set out to do. Like in this case, it basically complies with our ordinance. It's just it just falls just barely within that limit.
I understand it the same way.
So what we're effectively doing is putting in a procedure for us to follow, which makes perfect sense. We'll have to have 2 votes because it's an ordinance, amendment to an ordinance, and then it'll be 30 days after that before we can have a hearing and make an adjustment to the safe zone.
Correct. Once the ordinance becomes effective, which is 21 days after its passage, any new safe zones that are established would require the notice to abutters and a public hearing. This current safe zone that we've been discussing tonight is already established, so it really doesn't impact that safe zone because it's already in place. This would be for any future municipal safe zones that are established.
Hey, thank you.
Right, but the ability to give an exception to this gentleman.
This should take place after the second reading when this ordinance is finalized. That would be appropriate at that time to approve a license with exceptions noted.
So you could do that at
Vote for the safe zone, is that correct?
This is the first reading of this ordinance that establishes a procedure to establish a safe zone and then also allows for exceptions which need to be cited.
And then we can do that after.
Correct.
Sounds good.
any other discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Councilor Klepak?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Thank you for clearing it up for me, Patty and Eric. Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Eric, what do you want to do?
Councilor Thomas, do we want to bring this back into table till next meeting,
I mean, we have to.
by the sounds of it?
Until we pass the ordinance, we can't act on
Right.
what they want. So I would say, yes, we're going to table it until the next regular.
So that would be Resolution 185 is
Cool.
the,
You're on the right path.
right.
No, you're on the right
We
path.
need a second.
Hold on.
Second.
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yep.
Counselor Green?
So this is to table,
The license
The license,
issuance
okay.
until the next meeting?
yes, yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Thank you, Rebecca, for clearing it up. I couldn't quite hear what was going on, but yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you, Katie. All right, next is Resolution 193, 2021.
A resolution providing for renewal of a special amusement license to Cancun LLC, doing business as Cancun Mexican Restaurant.
Move to adopt.
Any comments?
Is there a second?
I need a second.
No
Move
second.
to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion now?
Chief,
Why would,
you know, there's been lots of ongoing issues with this particular establishment, including they had to close down because of violating COVID restrictions. Other things that I hear about all the time. I'm just wondering if you have any concerns about the operations of this particular business.
Well, we receive more calls for service at Cancun's and other area restaurants. There's no question about that. It's a variety of different calls, from disorderly conduct calls to fights to removing people from the bars. So again, they have a much higher calls for service than the neighboring bars in that particular area.
Honestly, I'd like to have a conversation with Hector.
I would agree on that.
I frankly think it's time to do it in a public meeting, and so I'm going to make a motion to table this until the next regularly scheduled meeting so that Hector can be here to be involved in this discussion.
And I'll second that on the same grounds. I'd like to have a back and forth on that to make sure that he has a fair time to answer these questions as well. So,
Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Was there a second to that motion?
Yeah.
Just for clarification here, didn't we already approve this license in the consent agenda?
No.
No.
No?
No, not this one.
Okay.
The consent agenda would have the liquor license on it as part of the quarterly renewals. The special amusement license allows for live entertainment.
Ah, got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So can the license be renewed with like sponsors they have or under security?
Yes, you can set restrictions on special amusement licenses if you choose.
Okay.
We've done that. I recall that we're having some.
Bobbin had a few.
I was on the council when we made them come and answer questions.
Okay. Thank you.
yep.
All right, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to Resolution 194, 2021.
A resolution providing for police vehicle bid approval.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Chief, you didn't even have to leave.
if you received the memo, I'm recommending that we accept the bids from Quirk Motors for two 2021 Ford police utility vehicles. They have them on the lot, which is very significant because right now, because of production, if we were to use one of the other dealers that bid, they could not take delivery until February or March. That's how long we'd have to wait. Quirk Motors has them on the lot, on site right now, and we'd be able to purchase them immediately.
And we need them, so. Any other discussion? Claude?
Is the lack of availability, is that one of the chip issues in manufacturing in Detroit? And the follow-up question then is that why the Quirk bid is higher than the other bids?
Yes, the availability is certainly significant for us. We have two vehicles right now that we're going to trade in that have over 100,000 miles. They're starting to have mechanical problems. This is just a good time for us to trade those in. And I think waiting another 6 months is we're just asking for some problems with our vehicles. So that is the primary one. The other bidder that was a little less and close is for 2022 Dodge Durangos Pursuit utility vehicles. We have right now a fleet standardized of all Fords, and so I think for maintenance and efficiency, has a different style and interior style to it that would require us to buy brand new mounts and fabricate some of them to put our radios and computers on, to put the bumper on, the cages, the light bars. That's pretty significant. Setup costs are expensive on cruisers. So, and then we'd be running with one Dodge and several Fords.
Eric?
I just want to remind counselors that we took the money for these cruisers out of the budget in anticipation. So just be aware that if you approve this purchase, it's in anticipation of bonding money to purchase these vehicles.
How does that work with the time frame that the chief
We
laid
just
out?
pay ourselves back.
We can pay for them in advance and then reimburse ourselves when we bond.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yep.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
Yes.
Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thanks, Chief. Resolution 195, 2021.
A resolution providing for appointing Patrick Moore to the Housing Committee.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, I believe Patrick is here. Yes.
He's hiding.
I just wanted to give him the opportunity to say what his.
What's this, like the 6th committee?
Third, I believe. Yeah, so I am currently a local Air Force recruiter in Waterville. That's what brought me here. I've lived here for over 2 years now. I love living in Maine, and my time in the Air Force is coming to an end. I plan on staying here. I see a lot of development and progress happening in the city, and I would just like to continue being a part of that. I'm not I have a couple properties, nothing crazy. So any way I can help with affordable housing, that crisis going on right now in Waterville, I, would like to put my time into it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Being ex-Navy, he had me until he said Air Force. I'm just saying.
Oh, you squid. Anything else?
I'm right here, I can hear you.
I know. I said it. All right, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yes.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
God, yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 196, 2021.
A resolution providing for bid award for Fire Department Engine 2 refurbish.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Chief?
Good evening. The resolution in front of you is simply to refurbish one of our fire trucks. Fire trucks generally cost $650,000 nowadays to replace, so we're big proponents. In previous administration, both the city manager and the previous fire chief put together a refurbish program where the vehicle is at its halfway point of its service life. The body's taken off in it. The frame is treated for corrosion, any electrical issues, and the vehicle is just generally brought into the 20th century, sort of say. It's a lot less cost, and it ultimately saves tax dollars, increases safety at the same time as reducing our operational budget. So this is a good investment. We set aside this money in the 2020 bond, and we just got around, because we've been so busy, of actually putting this out to bid. There are only 4 reputable manufacturers that I know of in the state of Maine that can complete this work on fire trucks. We got 2 bids back. It's very clear that one of them is a lot less than the others. This particular vendor, Northeast Fire Apparatus, has refurbished our old tower truck, which extended its service life, and it also refurbished our old Engine 1, which we got nearly 29 years out of. So that's a reflection of our maintenance program and, of course, our refurbish program, which I wholeheartedly support.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Any questions? Any comments? Claude?
Just quickly, Chief, what's the what's the time frame for the refurbish, and will that affect the ability of how will that affect the ability of the fire department to respond?
Will have no impact on the fire department to respond. With our previous tower truck, we actually had a pump installed on it. So we will have our tower truck and our backup engine, or excuse me, our second due engine available at all times. So this is our reserve truck, essentially. So again, we downsized the fleet. This will have very little impact to the fire department.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Oh,
No, thank you.
Pat, I can't get a roll call.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to Order 197, 2021.
An order providing for acceptance of a 2020 FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Chief?
So around the state, and in Waterville is no exception, we're seeing a paramedic shortage, or a shortage of people that are able to provide emergency medical services. The power of Delta Ambulance and Waterville Fire Department working together, we collaboratively wrote a grant and subsequently received the grant in the amount of $338,181 and change to train 15 paramedics, 15 advanced EMTs to the paramedic level. This includes classroom, this includes books, and it also includes some payroll reimbursement for the employees in the program. So I highly suggest that you accept this grant, and we will increase the service at the Waterville Fire Department at little to no cost to the taxpayer.
Sounds good to me.
Quick question. So, behalf of Waterville and Delta, so 15, what's the breakdown? Like of these advanced EMTs to bump up, how many are Delta, how many are Waterville?
So we will split this evenly. So there'll be a 8-7.
Fair enough.
It'll be close. It'll be close.
Who gets the 8?
We can have the 8 if we want it.
Okay, we do.
I think we want it.
We did the legwork.
We want the 8. We want the 8.
Yeah. And again, this will be voluntary. You know, we will ask our firefighters and EMTs to volunteer to do this. They'll go through the program. When they hand us a certification, we'll then
Would you explain how this will work with the MOU with the firefighters that we approved earlier in the meeting?
Yeah, assuming we've approved the MOU, if we hire 3 paramedics with that MOU, this has no impact specifically on the MOU itself. What it has an impact on is our current, so assuming that someone goes to the paramedic level that is currently employed with the Waterville Fire Department, they would receive an additional $1,000 a year to hold that paramedic certification, which is extremely low.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie?
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to Order 198, 2021.
An order providing for acceptance of a 2020 FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Chief, you're the gift that keeps on giving. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, this is the good work of not only the Waterville Fire Department, but the area fire departments working together collectively. So the town of Albion, the fire chief, Andrew Clark, wrote a regional grant on behalf of multiple organizations for the replacement of radios. Now, radios are extremely expensive. One radio can be upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 in a truck, $2,000 per firefighter. Something we desperately need and is very difficult to replace. Our current communications budget in the Waterville Fire Department is $4,000 annually, so that's about 2 portables a year. So Waterville's portion of this grant, should you choose to accept, is about $82,000. It represents 30 portables, 6 mobiles, and 15 pagers, which is significant. And again, the overall grant was $627,385 and some change. So I would like to publicly express my appreciation to Chief Clark and Albion for writing this grant and including us in the application.
Steve, how are we paying for the $82,000? Pardon me?
So the $82,000 will come from FEMA, through the town of Albion, actually come through the town of Albion. FEMA will provide Albion with $627,000. They will then in turn cut us a check for $82,000. We'll be responsible for the 10% match to that, which will be $8,232. Okay. Yeah, $8,232.55, which I recommend we take out of the Fire Rescue Reserve account. And that's incredibly important to mention because I believe there's another resolution in here in regards to transfer of funds. Yep. So again, we're not asking to take money from general fund. We're asking to take money from our savings account that we have on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counselor DeBrito?
Yes.
Counselor Klepak?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Foss?
Yes.
Counselor Frankie? Counselor Frankie? You're on mute.
Yes.
Counselor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 199, 2021.
A resolution providing for transfer of funds.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Chief?
So again, this memorandum just basically when we set out on this journey of our ambulance program, our first priority was taking care of our residents, making sure that they had an ambulance on scene in a short amount of time, and that we could do some backup work to help the hospitals with some overflow. That was the priority. Subsequently, revenue comes in after the fact. To summarize, we show a net profit of approximately $121,000, 644 and some change. So consistent with my presentation back in October, when we talked about taking some of that EMS revenue, shifting it into that capital account, which is known as the Fire Rescue Reserve account, specific for the sustaining this program. This resolution that's in front of you just simply makes that happen. And I just want to point out that what Councilor Thomas discussed, this is just establishing the intent of where that money is going. It doesn't mean that it's locked in, that you can't use it for anything else if emergency come along. You know, I might be frustrated, but it is what it is, right? It just establishes the intent that this is where this money is going to go. And to be quite honest with you, I'm going to need another ambulance.
I hope to see you.
I'm going to need another ambulance.
So, did we just voted to spend money out of this specific fund, didn't you not? For your radios?
8,200 for radios and about 16,000 for the paramedic program.
All right. Just making sure that so everybody knows that that's the same fund that we're looking at putting money into, and why it's important that we have it. And I hope that you get the new ambulance. I hope that the program keeps growing. I hope that it does exactly what you have set out to do, and it has to this point, and I appreciate it. I mean, your department is extremely appreciated by the city.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Thank you for all your work, Chief. Yes.
Thank you.
Council Green?
Yes.
Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
I would have said something if the mayor had recognized me, so I'll just take a moment to say that I'm opposed to having separate little funds here and there. We're going to be needing funds to spend from the general fund, and I think it's just wrong to segregate out this much money. Therefore, I vote no.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resolution 200, 2021.
A resolution providing for requesting the use of masks to prevent the spread of the virus.
I'll motion.
Move to adopt.
No, move. I'll second.
Any discussion?
So,
Claude?
okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank Councilor Frankie for getting this topic on the agenda tonight. And I think it is very important for us to send a message to everyone in Waterville that it's important to wear masks and to follow CDC guidance. And I think this resolution will fulfill that purpose. So I'm in support of 200 2021. Thank you.
Claude?
Well, I think I made my pitch earlier. It remains the same. We need to let the people in Waterville know that City Council is serious about dealing with the pandemic. The reports of the number of cases in Maine are growing day by day. So I don't think we should sit on our hands and wait for the people at the level to
Councilor Foss.
So back in January, $18,000 to properly pressure test N95 masks, which are the go-to choice for protection of COVID. And if I'm mistaken, we could probably bring Chief up here to talk about that, because his fire department was using N95 pressure tested to protect them against COVID-19. I'm not against masks. I want people to make decisions for themselves, what's good for them.
Reiterate my previous objection, because we have a team that's worked very effectively following the state's guidelines on all of the requirements or recommendations for combating the spread of COVID-19. But if the council is in favor of adopting this, I need to point out that there's what you might say a fatal flaw in the final passage, where it says, "Now therefore be it resolved, hereby directs the leaders of city departments." Stopping right there, that contradicts the charter. The council has no authority to direct department heads. That order would have to go to the city manager, who then would carry it out.
Eric?
Well, I would also point out that the last paragraph says, "This directive shall remain in effect until the CDC lowers this county's risk assessment." I mean, that could happen for one day and then come back. So, you know, if we go below substantial transmission for a day, does that mean this is no longer in effect? I think maybe there's some more work on the language that needs to be done.
That would be my understanding. That's the way I read it too. If it goes down and dips below, then when it comes back up, we would have to bring another resolution in, because this one would be null and void at that point. That's the way I read it as well.
Claude?
Well, that seems to me to be as workable as anything. If the threat level goes down, why, fine and dandy. If the threat level goes back up, we can always revisit another resolution. Or, as the city manager likes to point out, they're doing such an excellent job, although they have not been tooting their own horn, I would point out, which is one of the reasons for my resolution, that we need to take a stand, and that's what I proposed. If the wording needs to be amended, accept that as an amendment, or to make that as a change to the I mean, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me, Steve.
So Steve, we changed the language that says that it's up to you, and if they pass this ordinance, it's still
resolution.
This resolution, it's still your choice.
Directing Steve to direct the employees instead of saying that we're directing the employees. It's really.
But in this, does it say that they're required
You're directing
to wear the
me
masks?
you're directing the city manager to apply the policy that is stated in this resolution.
Mhm.
I'll take care of it from there.
Yeah. I object once it hits my desk.
So there is a motion on the floor to amend this to put the language of the city manager rather than the city department heads. There's a motion, but there's no second.
I think that if I make the change, that it doesn't require a motion, Patty.
Okay.
We could check with the legal counsel on that, but I think that's more or less procedure on the motions, that the person making the motion makes the change.
That part's done. Do you want a roll call on that? No.
Yeah, we don't need one.
Done deal.
We'd be roll calling the entire res.
So pretty much what we are voting on is the fact that we're not requiring anybody to wear it, but we're just saying, like, if he was to wear it, that'd be nice.
The way I understand it, but I'm not in for,
And
I'm
I think like for me, the reason why I'm approving this is we have to look what we're surrounded by. We're surrounded by 2 colleges that it's mandatory for them to wear. Public schools that they have to wear masks. We're surrounded by hospitals and medical facilities that they have to wear a mask. So my understanding, well, as of this, is that if I have a paramedic come into my house, that paramedic may not be masked.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that was a question.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. So if
Okay.
so if a firefighter EMT or firefighter paramedic or paramedic for the transporting organization comes to your house and delivers you patient care, they are wearing no less than gloves, a sealed eyewear, and an N95 respirator, which has been fit tested after the council approved $13,400 in grant funding to get that fit test machine. So we are essentially no threat to our patients whatsoever.
Okay.
I have a question for Chief while he's up there.
Yeah.
That way he doesn't have to do the walk.
Good.
Get the steps for the night. The pressure fitting for the N95 mask, can you explain in great detail to the point of brown tail moth why you are specifically...
Come on.
Sorry, Tom. Why you have pressure tested and why it's an N95 mask instead of just a cloth mask or anything lower than an N95?
No.
You cannot.
Not to the detail of the
Okay,
brown tail moth.
let's take it back to layman's terms. Why is it that that's pressure tested and why N95?
So a fit test machine has basically 2 tubes, one that monitors outside air and one that monitors inside air. And it measures the particles that are exchanged between outside and inside air. And it is so extremely scientific that you have to have the right fit. That's why they call it fit testing. You have to have the right fit to get that particle count down so low that only 95% of the particles at all of our hospitals around here. That's what we wear to protect not only ourselves, but our patients. So that's what it's measuring for, is the exchange in particles from outside to inside.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. And just so I'm clear, and I do not mean to be anything but just to be clear, people that have N95 masks without them being properly fit tested and pressurized, as you described, is effective.
If they're not fit tested, they're not approved for use in a facility like mine.
10-4.
Period. Because we can't provide validity that seal is actually doing its job.
10-4. Thank you, Chief.
No problem at all. So yes, we're coming to your house in full PPE.
Okay. So
Wanna make
one
sure that's
department is following that, so.
Yeah, so are you suggesting, Councillor Foss, that we ask city employees to wear N95 masks?
No, I'm specifically saying that if you're not wearing a respirator or an N95 fitted with a fitment test, you're not doing yourself a lot of help. And the reason the further reason I say that is because the COVID-19 particle is approximately the size of tear gas, within, I think, about 0.4 microns, okay? Being military, we are trained in tear gas, and the only way to protect oneself from that is in a canister respirator properly fitted to the face. In other words, I can't have this, okay, and wear a full respirator over it, okay?
Yeah.
And so that's the only way to truly protect oneself. It's not protecting the assailant, what's coming out. It's protecting the one coming in. I can't have this.
Yeah, so I do understand that, the science behind the N95 mask, but if I'm not mistaken, I mean, the CDC has recommended wearing masks of any type, and based on the evidence that it does prevent the transmission of COVID. And I guess I'm wondering if I appreciate so much the steps that the fire department is taking to protect people, but what is the difference between going into someone's house and having citizens come into City Hall? I mean, we want to protect those people too. And if we can do that by asking employees to wear masks, then I think we should be doing that.
Go ahead, Eric.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's as much to protect the firefighters from catching COVID from somebody who they might be responding to as it is the other way around, because we don't want the entire fire department to be exposed to COVID and then already short-staffed and then not have anyone to send out to people's houses.
Well, if I may, the way the question was asked is, if you're coming into my house, will you be wearing this gear? Yes. And yes, we want to protect everyone, but
the main point of wearing the gear is to protect the firefighters, right? That's the main.
That is correct. It's an occupational workplace requirement. I will tell you right now that our firefighters and EMTs are transporting COVID positive patients every day. And we're not seeing the transmission back to the fire department while we're wearing this protective gear.
Mm-hmm.
What I can say, undoubtedly, is that when people are at home going to concerts, whether it be a firefighter, whether it be, a city councilor, if you're going to go to a concert or, large gatherings, that's where I believe that, COVID's coming from.
Yes, and the Waterville Opera House has adopted a policy that requires proof of vaccination and masking inside, so.
It actually does not require masking. The policy requires that you are vaccinated or you show a negative test. We highly recommend that you wear a mask while you're inside the Opera House, but we sell concessions, and so if you're drinking, you're allowed to take your mask off, and many people, we do our best to recommend that people keep their mask on, but if they take it off, we're not beating them over the head. And a lot of that is actually coming from the artists themselves, and it's because, I don't want to get into a long explanation of the concert business, but so just recently, a band that I follow on Facebook, they had to stop their tour because somebody was exposed to COVID, and it's their entire business model, and they travel around and they're exposed to lots of people, so they're doing as much as they possibly can to protect themselves because it's a financial consideration. Mm-hmm. If they, if one of them is exposed to COVID and they're in the middle of a tour, they have to stop the tour. They've got 50 people sitting around that they're paying, and they might not be able to play a show for 2 weeks. And so a lot of this is the concert industry, I think, trying to get out in front of being shut down by the government by putting these policies in place, because then we can say, if everyone's vaccinated or negative and, we're trying our best to get people to wear a mask, how can you shut us down? And we're still all in fear that we're going to be not operating much longer, but.
Right, and so all the more reason to reduce the spread of COVID in the community. And just to return to this resolution, it is based on following CDC guidance, right, which recommends that masks be worn indoors.
Recommends.
Yep.
It's not as of right now, it's not a requirement.
Right.
Chief, you're with your people every day. How do you think they feel about wearing masks when they go back to the station?
Well, I'll tell you that our firefighters and EMS providers will almost 100% of the time advocate for wearing N95 respirators and protective equipment when they're responding to somebody's home and dealing with COVID patients. But back at the station, where all but 2 of our individuals are vaccinated, it's a morale killer, to be honest with you. We are following CDC guidelines to the absolute best of our ability. We've consulted with our medical director, who's advised us to continue to follow CDC guidelines. As the Delta variant picks up, we may increase our requirements around the station But as it stands right now today, if a firefighter is required to wear a mask in their own personal sleeping quarters, it's going to kill morale. You know, and it could be counterproductive. Now, not saying I don't support masks, I'm just giving you the reality of the answer to your question.
Thank you, sir.
I got a question. So you made a good point saying that you guys are all vaccinated. So with this requirement, is there any way that we would be able to tweak it to say, but then again, we can't do that. Because I'm saying,
not
like,
HIPAA
if you're
violation.
vaccinated, then, because if the whole unit is vaccinated, then there is a difference there.
All but 2 of our people are vaccinated. One of them is getting vaccinated, and the last one has a medical exemption that forbids him from being vaccinated. However, we may require that individual to wear a mask to protect our
Okay.
workforce.
See, that's
as-
what I want to see more of.
as
Yeah.
a CDC step or recommendation as the Delta variant continues to pick up. Again, I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't claim to be a professional here. I support the CDC guidelines. The CDC currently recommends it. If you're not vaccinated, that's my opinion.
Okay. And I really like what he said, because he said if you're not vaccinated, we're going to recommend that you wear a mask. It's a recommendation at the end of the day.
Which is all it should be. All
Yeah.
it should ever be is a recommendation. Rick?
So this resolution, the way I understand it, in the bottom, there, now therefore, it be resolved, 2 lines down, that all persons, we're not talking about just city employees. We're asking all people, all persons shall wear masks in city buildings and in spaces. Okay, so my point of this is back in January, when we were under full mask mandates, whether it be cloth N95, we were going by the CDC guides, the science that we talk about, cloth, 95, N95, whatever it was, we were still at the highest percentage of daily infection rates with masks on, okay? Couple that with what we bought for chief and his fire department to properly fit an N95 mask. You're asking everybody that goes in there, if we're going to talk about the science, N95 is the way to go. Everybody that goes into that building has to have a properly fitted N95 mask. We're requesting it. We're not ordering it now, but we're requesting it.
So it looks like.
I don't get it.
I don't understand where you're getting, you're hanging up on N95. That's what we're sending the paramedics out with, because that is.
Chief, are you sending out the paramedics with anything but N95?
Nothing more than
Okay. Is it, am I under,
No, not.
hold on. Am I under the understanding that, Doug, that the CDC has said face coverings?
Face coverings.
Thank you.
Point, I've worn masks this whole time. We go places. Everybody has to wear a mask when they go to certain places. I choose not to go to some of those places. But as long as it's a recommendation and no one's getting in trouble because they didn't do it, I'm not going to balk at it. I mean, plenty of times I go into a facility with a mask that isn't an N95 mask. Do I feel like it's a placebo for other? But I do it. And again, I've said this before. Once the CDC says, hey, everyone needs to be wearing masks inside, I'm going to do it. I'm recommended to wear sunscreen. I've never put a drop on. I'm not going to use 1,000 chemicals to protect me from something natural. I'll just wear long sleeves. They're not requiring us to do it. Steve, even with this ordinance, nothing requires you to force our employees to wear masks. Am I correct?
The word request is an ask.
It's an ask.
It's not an order.
Yeah.
Am I correct? He doesn't have to make him do it. If you're leaving it to his discretion.
Yeah, because it's requesting.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not saying you
I think-
must do
Going to
it.
get fired if they don't wear a mask.
Okay.
But this isn't speaking just about employees. This is
In
patrons
general,
as well.
everyone.
People going into a city building.
Yep.
Not just the employees working there.
Has anybody stopped to ask any of the city employees what they want?
Well, I think we just did with the fire department.
Well, one department. Go ahead, Klepak, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I don't think any of us need to be epidemiologists or scientists here. That's what the main CDC is for. The entire purpose of what we're doing here with this resolution is very simple in my mind, to simply acknowledge the CDC guidance as it applies to the situation on the ground, which evolves with time.
Yep.
Which is what we've been doing all along.
That's the key is that we've been doing
and
it.
this resolution is simply an explicit acknowledgement of that. Am I wrong, Claude, or however, isn't that what the...
That's how I understand it.
I mean, the current
people you've left in charge to do this have told you they don't want it.
But if they're not required to, if they don't want to.
But they're telling you that they don't even want the resolution. And you're giving them something that they're not requesting. Your city manager, your fire department, your police department, not one of them has come to you and said, hey, guess what? We're the guys that are in charge of doing this, guys and girls. We're the ones that are in charge of all of this, yet we're not coming to you asking for any of it.
Yes, Jay, but this is for all people, and I represent Ward 3, all of the residents that are possible go into any public spaces that the city runs. It's not just about the city employees, and I appreciate how hard it is for the morale of any of these first-line responders. This is up to their discretion, certainly, but this is for all residents here in the city of Waterville and anywhere else that may come into Waterville and go into these public spaces.
And it's already recommended to them that they wear a mask. Again, I'm not
Correct.
saying that
And
there's
this
anything
is
wrong
an
with this.
acknowledgement of that explicitly. You have made, you start with the recognizing the Renewable Energy Week.
Yep.
What does that do? Priorities, and that seems like that's what this is doing as well.
It is. I don't disagree with you. I'm just telling you that we're putting something forward that nobody other than councilmen or councilwomen have asked for.
I think citizens have asked for it.
And I think just as many citizens have told you, look at this room. Look at a room full of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
But I believe that this is a representation of choice. Like, it's a
This
requirement.
is absolutely a representation of choice.
Yeah, and also the same way when I go to Walmart, and the past 2 weeks, I've seen more people wearing masks every day.
By their choice.
By their choice.
By
And this is not
choice.
requiring anybody to mandate it.
No, that's why I'm okay with this one. I was not okay with the ordinance.
Yeah, I think this is totally
I
fine.
think we should move to a vote.
I think so too.
Patty, can we get a roll call?
Council Morris?
Yes.
Council DeBrito?
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor Klepak?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
It's a slippery slope. No.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
And just to be clear, nobody can't get fired or asked. Just a recommendation. It's not saying none of that.
Steve? You want to answer a question?
I reiterate what Councilor Foss just said. You already voted. What the consequences are going to be, whatever they are.
This shouldn't be.
My understanding is that by voting, we have sent a message that we take this seriously. We want the city to follow the CDC guidance. And
I will, this resolution to the letter, and I will request that we take all appropriate measures to ask people to wear masks in city facilities. That includes the employees. This doesn't mandate that they do it, and if and I'm not going to mandate that they do it unless Maine CDC issues such a guidance.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? All right. Resolution 201-2021.
A resolution providing for referral to the planning board.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yes.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel Frankie?
I'm sorry, I missed, with this one is for the mayor's recommendation to have a system for reevaluating
No,
old
Claude.
property.
That's the next one.
That's the next one. Oh,
This
excuse me.
is a referral to the planning board.
I thought that one was two.
We have two.
All right, I'll look for it. What the heck?
Claude's been warned down.
Claude's like, this meeting's getting late. All right. Any other discussion?
Wait, Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
The board is
Claude.
It's about time.
Are you good with this one?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Claude and I agreed on something. Anybody else? All right. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counsel Morris?
Yes.
Counsel DeBrito?
Yes.
Counsel Klepak?
Yes.
Counsel Green?
Yes.
Counsel Foss?
Yes.
Counsel
Yes.
Counsel Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Counselor updates.
Well, I have an update. I changed my last name. It's DeBrito now, so.
We just got one last name down. Now we've got this one to get down.
Well, at least now you don't have to say it twice. It was two last names. Anybody else? All right. Community notes. Anyone from the community have something they want to say? Online or otherwise? Oh, I see none. Oh.
That's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a good night.
Yay.